Ronny Mauricio and Luisangel Acuña are no longer top prospects, but both still have upside and could play big roles in 2026.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. On the show today, we're going to talk about Luisangel Acuña and Ronny Mauricio and how they factor into the Mets' plans for the upcoming season. In the first segment, I'm going to discuss what has happened over the last year for both of these guys. How did they perform in 2025? How they've been doing in the Winter League? We'll go through all of that. In the second segment, we're going to talk about how each of them factors into the Mets' plans this upcoming season. Then in the final segment, I'll talk about which player fits the Mets more long-term, and also, could Acuña help the Mets out in the center field this year? Before we get to any of that, though, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the #1 daily podcast on the New York Mets. Want to find any of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Now, last year, funny enough, Luisangel Acuña and Ronny Mauricio nearly got the same amount of plate appearances, but they came in completely different ways. For Acuña, he played 95 games, got 193 plate appearances. For Mauricio, 61 games played, 184 plate appearances. Acuña started off the year, I believe, on the big league roster. If not, he was up very soon after. I'm pretty sure he broke camp, though. And if you remember, early on in this season, we saw a lot of Acuña at second base. And I think it was because Jeff McNeil was out at the beginning of the year, if memory now serves. And so we saw Acuña playing a ton of second. He actually had a pretty good first month. He hit 288, got on base at a 342 clip. His weighted runs created plus was slightly above league average at 102. You might not remember this far back, but there was a little bit of Luisangel Acuña Rookie of the Year buzz in that first month of the season. I know this, and my brother-in-law, Brad, knows this because the two of us went in together on an Acuña futures bet to win Rookie of the Year. I apologize, Brad, if you're listening. That one's on me. I'm sorry. Not a good call. But at the time, Acuña was playing himself into more and more playing time. The Mets looked like a really good team, and you could start to see a narrative forming in a year where there wasn't any standout rookies at the time. And really, even as the season wore on, it's not like the NL Rookie of the Year race this year was anything comparable to the year prior, where it was Skeens and Jackson Merrill. Nothing close to that. So I'm not going to completely defend my take of actually taking Rookie of the Year for Acuña. But my point still stands, though, that there was a moment where Acuña looked like he could be a fixture. And then the bat went away, the playing time went away, and eventually he was demoted. Ronny Mauricio was coming off the torn ACL, going to be his first full season off the injury, didn't even have a healthy spring training, was still slowly ramping back up. He ends up tearing through the minor leagues, and then the Mets have a roster need, so they call Ronny Mauricio up. Can't remember who went down, if it was Beatty or Vientos. I think it was Vientos that went down that necessitated the promotion for Mauricio after he played not even 10 games in AAA. He comes up. He performed pretty well, particularly in July. Had a great month. Had an 842 OPS, 132 WRC+. Was it a 3-home run game or a 2-home run game in San Francisco where he put one in the Bay there? Or was it San Francisco, or is it? I think it was San Francisco, right? Yeah, because he talked about his affinity for Bonds. So yeah, just a really great July where at the deadline, when the Mets were making moves, you're wondering, okay, well, how does Ronny Mauricio factor into the Mets' plans? How are they going to put this roster together and keep getting him at bats? And the at bats did fall off for Mauricio, but what he showed this past year was an ability to hit right-handed pitching, and he also looked outstanding at third base defensively. The metrics loved him. 4 defensive runs saved, 5 outs above average, and he didn't even get out there that much. These are stats that accumulate over time. The more you play the position, if you're good at it, the more you're going to rack up defensive runs saved and outs above average. In the small sample size, we're talking about Mauricio performing like a Gold Glover. Small sample size. But there is a roadmap that we saw laid where if Ronny Mauricio could ever figure out how to hit right-handed pitching, you could have a well above average regular over at third base. For Acuña, he was confined more to second base, where he's still graded out well defensively, 5 defensive runs saved, 1 outs above average. But the offensive limitations, because it doesn't have much pop, it really does come down to his ability to hit for a high average as a guy that is a good bat to ball hitter. If he can get on base a bunch, then that speed can show up and he can have some offensive value, but he has the floor of being a utility man who can play all over the diamond. You look at the ages. Acuña is still only 23 years old. He's turning 24 in March. Mauricio is 24. He turns 25 at the beginning of April. So these guys are still super young. There's still so much time left for them to reach their full potential. It's really just at this point a matter of if they will have the room to reach that full potential on the New York Mets. They also both played in the Winter League this year. Varying results, but also different leagues. So Acuña played in the Venezuelan Winter League, which is an easier league than Mauricio played in. Mauricio was in the Dominican Winter League. For 14 games, Mauricio hit 212, 276 on base, 365 slug, only 2 homers. It's a small sample size, but the results were not great, especially when you compare his seasons in the past in the Dominican Winter League, where this guy was unbelievable. In 2022, 2023, he posted an 803 OPS in 43 games. And in 23-24 in the Winter League, he was playing like an MVP before he tore his ACL. He was hitting 441 in 8 games and then went down with the injury. So Mauricio did not have the type of standout performance that we've come to expect of him in the Winter League, but I'm also not going to overreact to a 14-game sample. Meanwhile, Acuña, again playing in the lesser league, hit 282, got on base at a 397 clip, slugged at a 542 clip. He did hit 8 home runs and stole 12 bases in 39 games. And that does not count the 4 home run game we were talking about the other day that he had over the weekend, where in a playoff game, he went yard 4 times. Do I think Acuña is suddenly going to become a power hitter? No. But remember, he did have a little bit of a power surge when he first came up and played out of his mind, replacing Francisco Lindor in 2024. He just caught a little bit of that 2024 Mets magic and rode with it. There is some power that Acuña can unlock. He does hit the ball pretty hard, and again, he's so young. I'm not going to completely give up on the guy's ability to be a regular. I just don't know if that's going to come with the Mets. And ultimately, the way I look at these two guys, Acuña has a really high floor because of the defensive versatility and the speed. He can fill the role that he's served with the Mets over these last few years for a very long time in the big leagues, of just being a guy that can play all over the diamond, can steal bases, and you hope at some point he could hit for a high average, and then that might turn him from a utility man to a super utility man, and that's where you get into what could be the ceiling instead of the floor. I mean, really, the highest ceiling outcome for Acuña is he gets to go to a team where he plays shortstop, and then the glove can carry him even more if he was a regular at shortstop. For Mauricio, if everything gets unlocked, there's a 30 home run hitter in there, but it's just unlocking all of it. And then there's the holes against right-handed pitching, and just the fact that he chases so much and can put himself into really bad, counts at the plate. He just doesn't have the best approach, and it feels like he's a guy that can get game planned against, where the floor isn't nearly as high for Mauricio because, yeah, sure, great defender at third, but he doesn't have the same utility aspect as Acuña. And, you are expecting him to do more at the bat. So if he doesn't hit, the floor is a lot lower for Mauricio, but the ceiling as a regular is a lot higher when you factor in that power output. So now, as we turn the page to next season, what role are these guys going to play? And also, I want to revisit the decision the Mets made at the trade deadline, because they had one of two options. They could have demoted Acuña, or they could have demoted Mauricio, and whoever they demoted was going to lose their final option year. The choice was Acuña that they sent down. Was that the right call? We're going to go through that as well here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel has a profit boost pack waiting for users inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded up with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets you like the most. You open up your profit boost pack the first thing on game day, see what boost you want to apply, and those boosts will let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback, player coaching. The boost will give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 16,000 subscribers. All right, so first and foremost, I want to go back and unpack the decision the Mets made at the trade deadline last year, where after all the moves they made, Luisangel Acuña was sent down and Ronny Mauricio remained with the big league club. At the time, my argument was for the betterment of the 2025 Mets, Ronny Mauricio should have been sent down to AAA. And the reason that I felt that way is because Mauricio had shown the ability to be a regular. And I felt like he would get a lot more from going down in the minor leagues, playing third base every day, giving you a contingency plan for both Beatty and Vientos, that this was a bat that you could get red hot down there and call up, and maybe he could be an impact player down the stretch. I felt like Mauricio stood a lot more to gain in AAA last year than Acuña did. And I also felt like long-term, Luisangel Acuña as a bench piece, but without as much offensive potential, it might have made more sense for the upcoming season for 2026 to still have that option for Acuña, where he could be parked in AAA and called on whenever you needed a guy to bring you speed, defense, whatever it is. Now that we are past the 2025 season, we watched how it played out. Obviously, it didn't play out well for the Mets, and we're now heading towards the 2026 season. I think the Mets might have made the right call, because if you had to ask me right now, who would I rather have the option to send to the minor leagues for the start of this season, Mauricio or Acuña? Without a doubt in my mind, it's Ronny Mauricio, and it's the same thing that I said last year. But the Mets have preserved that option for now the entirety of the 2026 season, where Ronny Mauricio can be the contingency plan that's waiting in AAA to back up Brett Beatty without being on the roster. He's your second in the depth chart as your third baseman. I mean, obviously, since he can't hit left-handed pitching, if Mauricio had to come up because Beatty got hurt, it'd probably be some type of a platoon situation where either Acuña or Vientos would have to platoon with them unless he could prove he could hit lefties. But that's the beautiful thing. There's no reason why you can't play Ronny Mauricio every single day and have him face all the lefties in AAA and see if he can work on that. Yes, he's always been better swinging it from the left side, facing right-handed pitching, but those splits were never as stark as they were last year, where the guy was absolutely abysmal against big league left-handed pitching. He struck out 14 times in 38 plate appearances, only walked twice, only got 3 hits, had a 132 on base percentage, and a 215, not average, not slugging percentage, a 215 OPS. That is on base plus slugging. So a 132 on base percentage and a 215 OPS tells you that his slug was under 100 because he didn't slug. He had a couple of singles or 3 singles. His weighted runs created plus was minus 38, which means he was 138% worse than a league average hitter. Just awful against lefties. But against righties, hit a 121 WRC plus. He hit 265, had a 447 slug, had all 6 of his home runs against righties. So there is a lot to like about Mauricio as a strong side of the platoon third baseman, who you hope as a switch hitter can figure it out against lefties. And that's the beauty of him having this option, is you can park him in AAA until you need him. And it's a high upside player that will get a lot of playing time, and that's what you want in AAA. And you see what he can ultimately do. This year, I want Ronny Mauricio not only playing a bunch of third base, but also playing some first base. So you're going to have Ryan Clifford in AAA. Ryan Clifford should get a lion's share of the first base, but he's also going to continue to flex his own versatility and go out and play some corner outfield. So when Ryan Clifford is playing left or right, you stick Ronny Mauricio at first base because that gives you another contingency plan for Jorge Polanco and Mark Vientos over at first. I think there's a chance that Ronny Mauricio could be an awesome first baseman. He was great at third. He's 6'4", so he gives you that big target. He's a former shortstop. He's got good hands. I could see Mauricio being an absolute stud at first. Again, he sort of already was one at third, but I think it just gives you another option. So if Brett Beatty is continuing to perform the way he did in the second half, and you have an above average everyday third baseman in Beatty, but maybe Vientos isn't hitting and Mauricio is, and you've now shown that he could play first, maybe you can call him up, whether it's to DH or play first base. So I think there's a lot to like about Mauricio having that option now. And I gotta tip my hat to the Mets front office because they were absolutely right with that decision. Where Acuña, now that you traded Jeff McNeil, he's just on the bench. And he's your backup second baseman. He's your backup shortstop. You know that he can play third base if you need him to. And right now in this roster, he could get a good amount of time in center field unless the Mets pick up some options out in the outfield, which we still hope that they do. But you're looking at a guy in Acuña who now probably has to play more outfield to get on the field because of the glut of infielders the Mets have and the fact that Semien and Lindor are guys that want to play every single day. That does block them out of the infield a lot. But center field is absolutely wide open right now. And if Acuña goes into spring and in center field, he's competing with Tyrone Taylor and Jet Williams because the Mets never had an outfielder and Carson Benjamin left, you never know. There could actually be a legitimate chance that Luisangel Acuña is your starting center fielder on opening day. I want to talk about Acuña in center and ultimately which of these two guys will have a bigger role in 2026 and beyond, Luisangel Acuña or Ronny Mauricio. We're going to go through all of that in just a minute. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now it's time to take it up a level and go ad free. Join the Everyday Club and get Locked On Mets without the interruptions and an invite to our members only Locked On Mets Everyday Club Discord server. You also get a little bit of more bonus features as well. Go to lockedonmets.supercast.com to learn more. All right, so Luisangel Acuña in center field is interesting because he is 5'8", and that's on a good day. Tyrone Taylor is 6'1". He's a more prototypical outfielder, prototypical center fielder. But Acuña has great instincts, and he is a plus runner. While you don't typically like to have short guys playing in the outfield because you think shorter guy doesn't have as long as strides, when you have the speed of Acuña or Jet Williams, you can make it work. And I do think there's something to be said about the upside of Acuña compared to Tyrone Taylor. Obviously, defensively, Tyrone Taylor is going to be better, but he is getting worse offensively. We forget that Tyrone Taylor, when the Mets traded for him, I wasn't just talking about the defense. I was talking about power that has never shown up in a Mets uniform. Tyrone Taylor, in the 3 seasons prior to coming to the Mets, 93 games, 271 plate appearances. In 2021, he hit 12 homers. 2022, 120 games, 405 plate appearances. He hit 17 homers. Then 2023, in 81 games, he hit 10 homers. With the Mets, he's hit 9 homers in over 240 games. 9 homers, and last year he hit 2 homers in 113 games. He's already 31. He's turning 32 actually in about 9 days. So happy early birthday to Tyrone Taylor. I think this guy's getting worse offensively. I don't think he's getting better. He's not a bad fourth outfielder, but if Acuña proves that he can play out there, he's 24 years old. You can make a case that if you gave Luisangel Acuña and Tyrone Taylor the same amount of plate appearances, Acuña could go yard more. He really could. I could see him running into 5 or 6 homers. And the way Tyrone Taylor looked offensively last year, I just don't know if that power bat still exists. And Acuña brings you something on the bases that Tyrone Taylor does not. Tyrone Taylor has plenty of speed. He can also steal bases. He stole 12 bags last year. But Acuña stole 16 bases. And he also scored 30 runs. Now, Tyrone Taylor scored 34 runs, but he got nearly double the plate appearances. I will say, of course, Acuña got pinch running opportunities where he gets on base because someone else got on base for him. And so that does inflate his runs scored, certainly. You look at RBIs, Tyrone Taylor definitely dwarfed Acuña. But I do think that if Luisangel Acuña proves that he could be an above-average defensive center fielder in spring training, and the Mets don't address the outfield, which I think they will, but even let's just say they sign Kyle Tucker. What if Carson Bench has a bad spring and you have Tucker? Now there's less pressure to force Carson Bench onto the big league roster if he had a bad spring. Jet Williams, I think, is still a long shot to break camp. There are things that he can still work on in AAA. Hasn't had a ton of time there. I think that Jet Williams, instead of forcing him up where he might not have an everyday role, you're still better off letting this guy play every day in AAA, build his value in case you have to trade him at the deadline, but also get him, into his season. Don't just start him out in a bench utility role. I don't know if Jet's going to break camp. Acuña has to. There's no options. So he will be part of your roster unless you trade him or DFA him. And you're not going to DFA a guy that has the floor of Acuña as a bench piece. So he's going to be on your bench, at least. If the competition ends up being Bench, Taylor, Jet Williams, and Acuña, and Carson Bench and Jet Williams prove they need more time in AAA, and now it's just, okay, well, who's going to start between Tyrone Taylor and Luisangel Acuña? I think I'd rather watch Acuña play every day or more often than not because he's a more electric player. He gets on first base. You feel like he's going to score. Now, again, Tyrone Taylor is a better outfielder. We know that. But we haven't seen enough of Acuña to really know how good or bad he can be out there. And I honestly think that he would be above average. Would he be as good as Tyrone Taylor? Not necessarily. But again, offensively, I think I'd rather watch Acuña than Tyrone Taylor because I think there is room for him to maybe get hot for a little bit. And like last year, if Acuña just repeated his season and instead of playing second base, he played center, and in March and April combined, he hit 290, which is pretty much what he did last year, 288 average going into the month of May. If he did that, and in that month, Carson Bench got ready, and then Bench came up and took over, awesome. And the other thing I'll say about Acuña, if he can prove to be a good defensive center fielder, all of a sudden Tyrone Taylor does not have as much of a foothold on a roster spot, because if he can be your fourth outfielder, who's also your backup shortstop, your backup second baseman, your backup third baseman, your pinch runner, and you have a good outfield, let's say the Mets do sign Tucker and Carson Bench is your starting center fielder, there's not as much of a need for a fourth outfielder anyway. And so now you might have the ability to add an extra bat to the bench by getting rid of Tyrone Taylor and having Acuña assume that role of being the fourth outfielder, the backup center fielder, the defensive replacement late in games, all of those things. I'm very intrigued with how Acuña gets used this year, and I think he's going to play a bigger role on the Mets if things break right for Brett Baty and Mark Vientos and Jorge Polanco. I think Ronny Mauricio has the higher upside. For some reason, I just don't know if it all happens with the Mets. Like I can see Mauricio being a guy that tears the cover off the ball in AAA and gets traded in the middle of the season to a team that can actually play him more. But I don't know. It's an interesting floor versus ceiling debate with those two players. And long term, like, who would I bet on finishing with a higher career WAR? I'd probably lean Acuña only because of, again, that floor and the fact that I think Acuña is going to have a long career, where Ronny Mauricio, I'm not as sold on just his ability to iron out the kinks. But again, the higher ceiling player is Ronny Mauricio. Ronny Mauricio, I can really foresee him being a regular at some point this season. For Acuña, I can only see him being a regular for stretches, whether that's the start of the season because a Carson Bench or a Jet Williams needs more time, whether that's because somebody gets hurt and you need him to fill in, but he is a really good piece to have. The last thing I'll say about Acuña, Mauricio, and the 2026 Mets, if you look at this bench, this is where the Mets probably need to make an addition, regardless of what happens with their big ticket pursuits in the outfield. Because if you go into the season and you look at the bench, and it's Acuña, Taylor, Torrens as the main components of that bench, there's not a good hitter in that bunch. And there's, even with 3 right-handed hitters, there's not a lefty masher in that bunch. Ronny Mauricio could be your 4th piece on the bench that can give you a plus bat against right-handed pitching. But he's not going to be the answer most likely against left-handed pitching. So that is where the Mets still have a need for a lefty masher. Whether that is Miguel Andujar, maybe it's Austin Hayes, those guys make sense because this team could use a bench bat that can come in and pinch hit against lefties. And right now, they don't have that with Acuña or Taylor. And again, I think if Acuña can prove to be a above average defensive center fielder, that's going to free up a lot on this bench because eventually you might move on from Tyrone Taylor, and that just gives you another spot where you can have a Mauricio on the bench to hit right-handed pitching. You could have, maybe you picked up Hayes or you picked up Andujar as your right-handed bat off the bench that can hit left-handed pitching. You have Acuña to play all over the field, your defensive replacement, your pinch runner, your 4th outfielder, all of it. Torrens is your backup catcher. That could be how the Mets get to their best possible bench this season if Acuña proves that he can do that out in center field. And that's why I hope we see a lot of Luisangel Acuña play in center field in spring training. I don't know what else you'd be wanting him to work on, to be honest, with the way this roster is constructed. You know that if Simeon or Lindor goes down, Acuña is your answer defensively. He can play shortstop or second base in his sleep, it feels like. Center field is something that the Mets should really be throwing at Acuña this spring training, where he is out there all the time, getting reads, shagging out there as much as he can, and they should play him in a lot of games in center field to see what it looks like, because if he's a plus defender out there, I think it makes the Mets a much better team where you can do a lot more things with that roster. And remember, this guy will be on the roster. Ronny Mauricio, you had the luxury of putting him in AAA. You did not have that luxury with Luisangel Acuña. 2 pieces that were once top 100 prospects in baseball that are trying to find their big league path. The Mets probably aren't the best team for either of them to do so. Again, Acuña would be better served on a team that could play him at shortstop every day, and Mauricio would be better served to be on a team that could play him at third base every day. But for now, this is what the Mets have, and it'll be interesting to see what both of their roles end up being in 2026, or if either of them gets traded. And that's something I want to talk about on tomorrow's show. Barring any news, I want to talk about the Red Sox need for an infielder and if the Mets can line up in a trade with them. We'll, again, talk about any news or rumors that are going to come up, over the next couple days as well. And another show I'm going to do this week after, I think, the Red Sox trade show, I want to focus in on Brett Beatty and if he can actually have a complete full breakout season in 2026. So a lot of good stuff ahead this week. I appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe if you are watching on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, breaking down all the latest in Major League Baseball. You can find Locked On MLB on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel as well as their podcast feed.